provided to us. In thy name we pray. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So moved.
Motion made. Is there a second?
Second.
That the minutes of the previous meeting be approved as submitted on the motion.
Ryan.
Yes.
Robinson.
Yes.
Thomas.
Yes.
Berry.
Yes.
Parker.
Yes.
Height.
Yes.
And Witcher.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Let me look at the, let's see, communications. I've got two. Are there any others added? Ms. Marshall? Let's just go ahead and get the blanket motion, I guess, if there's no objection. There's blanket motion on items 1 and 2.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
On the communications to accept and file 1 and 2, Ms. Marshall?
Ryan.
Yes.
Robinson.
Yes.
Thomas.
Yes.
Berry.
Yes.
Parker.
Yes.
Height.
Yes.
And Witcher.
Yes.
Before I get into the presentations, I want to, I saw Ms. Dobbins come in through the door, and I know that there's an election tomorrow. I don't know if her opponent's here, but we want to encourage everybody. Sharon, if you want to come to the microphone, we're going to encourage everybody to not forget their election tomorrow in part of our city for representative, state representative, and Ms. Dobbins is one of those candidates. In addition to citywide for 2 bond issues that will be before the voters. So if you haven't voted already, let me encourage those of you, specifically those who are in Ms. Dobbins's district, to not forget that there's an election for state representative. But to all of us, citywide, please don't forget to vote and exercise your right to vote. There are 2 bond issues, one having to do with the financing of roadways, our highways, and I'm sure there's plenty of information in the newspapers on that, and the second one having to do with higher education. Tomorrow's the last day to exercise your right to vote. Please do. Ms. Dobbins, the floor is yours.
First of all, I would like to thank you, Mayor Hayes, and to the City Council, to all the citizens of this state, and the citizens of District 39. I am coming before you all tonight with humbleness and appreciation for your support that you've already given me. And I'm asking for the citizens of District 39 to go out tomorrow and cast your vote for me, Sharon Dobbins, your next Democratic State Representative. God bless each one of you all. Have a Merry Christmas and a prosperous New Year. Thank you.
And help us out, Ms. Dobbins. Would you just give us briefly the description of your district?
Okay.
What the boundary lines is?
Actually, it starts, you can go out, as far as out to, include some of Jacksonville, Rixey, McAllen. I named the communities because most people know some of the communities. Of course, we don't want to forget downtown, North Little Rock here, and we got Barron Cross, we got Scenic, it goes up as far as Scenic Hill, Rose City, Dark Hollow, Sherman Park, Glenview, Meadow Park, Dixie. I don't think I said Dixie, but it's pretty extensive. But and I hope I didn't leave anyone out because it's chop it up, put it up to my brain and not my heart because I love all the citizens. Yeah.
Don't forget to vote, and we appreciate it on those 2 issues citywide and on Ms. Dobbins' race in the area she described. Thank you, and please vote.
Thank you.
Mr. Pikus, Peter Pikus. Peter has been with us for several years now, along with our City Year folks, and he wanted to come make a quick presentation, and then we're going to go into our HKS presentation.
Good evening. My name is Jessica Williams, and I'm a City Year Corps member of North Little Rock, proudly serving on Team Purpose. I have been living in North Little Rock all of my life. I've been living with my grandmother. She raised me ever since I was 11 months old. I have a 3-year-old daughter who is the love of my life. I'm 18 years old, and I graduated from North Little Rock High School in May of 2005. So what brought me to City Year? I wanted to do City Year because I thought it was an awesome program. Once I saw the City Year video, I knew that that was the job for me. To get a chance to serve in the community that you have been a part of all your life is an honor to me. All the schools that I serve at, I attended them when I was in elementary, 7th Street, Rose City, and Poplar Street. At 7th Street, I do one-on-one interventions with 17 kids a day, kindergarten to first grade. And in first grade, I have this one kid that he didn't go to preschool or he didn't go to daycare, so school was kind of new for him. And so first of all, I had to work on keeping him awake in class, and then I worked on him with his name and ABCs and sounds and things like that. And now he knows how to count to 100, and he knows all his letters and sounds and things like that. At Rose City, we do tutoring at their after-school program on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and we are going to start up a Young Heroes program, my team, and we're going to work with 6th, 7th, and 8th graders on 2 Saturdays out of a month between January and May. Literacy, things like alcohol awareness and hunger and homelessness. And then at the end of the day, we're going to go out in the community and do service that relates to that topic. I wake up every morning wanting to put on my uniform because I know that I'm going to make a difference in somebody's life. These kids and sometimes even the teachers depend on me to be there to work with them. So every morning I get up with the kids in mind and with a positive can-do attitude. There's a quote that I like by Dr. Martin Luther King that says, "Everybody can be great because everyone can serve." I like that particular quote because I feel that service should be mandatory. You know, you might not like it in the beginning, but in the end, you feel like you've accomplished a lot. I'm only halfway through my 10-month commitment with City Year, but I feel like I've done a lot and that I can do more. So after City Year, I want to go to UALR to get a degree in nursing, and even in that field, I can still help people out and make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you.
As we continue on, my name is Lizeth Sanchez. I am the program manager for the team that serves in North Little Rock. Jessica is handing out some information regarding our service and initiative that we are doing here in North Little Rock, and I wanted to share a little bit about that. I wanted to share a quote by Pam Wilcox, who is the principal at 7th Street Elementary School, and she shares that we are already seeing improvements from our students as a result of City Year's work. We are anxious to give our next round of assessments to see the progress of our students. This is only the beginning of the work that we are doing here at North Little Rock with 7th Street. Currently, we have 7 corps members that work full-time in North Little Rock, Monday through Thursday, and they work in classrooms doing one-on-one tutoring as well as group tutoring. And it's anywhere ranging from letter fluency to word recognition to reading and comprehension. 72% of the students that we work with have progressed. So we're looking to see that number go up and become higher as we continue to work with those students. As well as our partnership with 7th Street, we also have a partnership with Rose City. At Rose City, we work with their after-school program that they have, and we help assist in writing and math skills, as well as doing team building and communication activities with them to teach them that there's other ways to communicate with one another than arguing and fighting. With middle school students, that's vital to learn and know. And that's 2 days a week that we do the after-school program. This partnership that we have with Rose City is really crucial and important to us because we are starting a new initiative called the Young Heroes program. As Jessica said, it's a program for middle school students, and during that time they gain service learning and leadership development skills. We will have 40 middle school students that will start the program in January, and I wanted to share with you they go through this whole application process. They fill out an application, they write essays, they get a letter of recommendation from a teacher or mentor, and then they go through an interview process. We had over 60 applications come in, over 400 that expressed interest, and some of them chose to bring in some of their artwork or a poem that they wrote. This is from a student at Poplar Street, and it's titled Volunteer. V is for very best work. O is for all jobs, this rocks. L, learning to help. U, unique in many ways. N, never give up. T, tell of your good deeds. E, express your work and creativity. E, excitedly spread your cheer. are, remember, always be a volunteer. This is a student that will be a part of our Young Heroes program and will get a chance to learn and experience amazing things within the next 5 months. And we hope to hear more of those kinds of stories in the next couple of months ahead of us. Thank you.
Thank you.
And good evening. My name is Peter Pickus, and I have the distinct pleasure of having the opportunity to work with Jessica and Lizeth and 40 more just like them. We serve, as you heard, with a full-time team now in North Little Rock, serving primarily at 7th Street and at Rose City. We also bring in the remainder of our corps to do lots of other service that hopefully you've had a chance to see over the course of time. If you've been to the North Heights Community Center, you've seen that the gym has a brand new paint job that we've worked on. Took a little longer than I think we had planned originally to get it done, but it is now complete. If you drive past the basketball courts behind Altel Arena underneath the highway, the beautiful murals that you now see along those courts were designed and painted by City Year. This fall and extending through this holiday season, we've really done a lot of outreach to families who are here because of the hurricanes that happened in Louisiana and Texas. And we had the opportunity, with help from the mayor and from some of his youth council and some of the folks, Steve Navoychek and others, to host a carnival for the evacuees back in September. So we know that a lot of the necessities have been provided to them. We have tried to make sure that some of the niceties are provided to them. We had the opportunity to provide Thanksgiving meals for several of those families in the North Little Rock community, and we have a 2-day carnival/camp planned for the week following this when the students are out of school, where we'll be hosting Katrina and Rita evacuees who are residents now of the North Little Rock community. We're proud of the work we're doing. I'm extremely proud of people like Jessica who have grown up here and have chosen to come back and serve with City Year. We're excited about the Young Heroes program because it's a way that we can really multiply the impact we're having. It's now not just a corps of 7 who are here full-time, but on those Saturdays it's a full-time corps of 47. And it's teaching 7th, 8th, 6th graders the benefits of community service, of giving back, while teaching them about some of the civics issues that you all as City Council wrestle with every day. And I just want to voice my appreciation to the council and to the mayor for your belief in the program. We are honored to get the opportunity to serve here and look forward to continuing to do that. We're happy to take any questions if you have any. You'll see, for those of you who got the handout, that there's a beautiful quote from Jessica's teacher. I won't read it in public because I don't want to embarrass her, but it's a fabulous quote and really speaks well of the work she's doing. So thank you very much.
We appreciate it, Peter, and to both of our City Year friends. We are excited about what you do, and very look forward very much to continuing our relationship. Thanks, Peter, for being a part of our community and adding to the benefits that our young people receive on all sorts of fronts. Let me just take care of a little bit of business before I go into the HKS presentation. I know that we've talked about possibly rescheduling the council meeting from the second council meeting is currently set for December the 26th, the second Monday, and I know that that's the day after, obviously, Christmas on Sunday. City Hall will be closed, if I'm not mistaken, and I know in talking to some of the members of the council over the last several weeks, there's somewhat of a consensus to try to reschedule that meeting at a different time. And I think, at least in my visits, it seems like, although it will present a difficulty for one council member, I think Alderman Height, the 22nd of December, which is on a Thursday, a week from this coming Thursday, seems to be one that might be as much of a consensus as possible. And if that is the case, I'd like to ask for a motion to move our regularly scheduled meeting from the 26th to December the 22nd, Thursday at 7 o'clock at this building. And we hope that this will be the last meeting, obviously, of the year, but also the last time that we'll need to enjoy the hospitality of our school district. We are making progress on our regular council chambers, and we're hopeful that on the council meeting, first council meeting on January the 9th, that we will be back in City Hall. Things are looking good, but I'm not ready to make that announcement just yet, but sort of point ourselves in that direction. I want to thank Alderman Witcher for that before we open the floor to take that one motion and the work that he's done in bringing us to this point. I went through City Hall or City Council chambers this morning, and it is truly a work of art. Alderman Witcher.
Oh, ye of little faith. Mayor, we will have our council meeting on the 9th of January in the council chambers. We may have one or two items that may not be in place at that time, but we will be prepared. I think one of the things that we are talking about is if everyone can start thinking about putting it on their calendar. We need to look at the audio-visual equipment so you'll be familiar with it prior to the council meeting. And we'd like to get a photograph of all the elected officials, all of the elected officials, including city clerk and Mr. Susky.
Our judges.
And well, if they would like to be considered elected officials in front of our council chamber for that, for the new chamber, opening of the new chamber. I think we'd like to do that sometime around 6 o'clock on Monday.
Unless there's an objection.
I move for the meeting be held on the 22nd.
And I second that.
All right, motion made and seconded that the meeting be rescheduled from the 26th to the 22nd, same place, same time. Ms. Marshall, would you call the roll?
Gibson.
Yes.
Bryant.
Yes.
Robinson.
Yes.
Thomas.
Yes.
Berry.
Yes.
Parker.
Yes.
Height.
Yes.
And Witcher.
Yes.
And unless there's an objection, we'll go ahead and call for a photograph, and we'll try to get those who are elected and not here invited, including the judges, for 6 o'clock on the 9th in front or in the council chambers.
Yes, sir.
I don't know that we need to take any action on that unless there's an objection. We'll just ask everyone to be there at 6 o'clock for a photo, and anyone else in the audience is welcome to come and watch our picture be taken. But Alderman Height?
I was just telling Alderman Bryant, I'm going to wear my special tie for him that night, so he'll be proud of me.
That pretty pink tie?
That pink tie.
All right. Those two things, I think, having been taken care of, I want to introduce you to Pat Carmichael. Pat is with HKS Architects, although he's not an architect, but he is involved in graphic reproduction, visual reproduction? Visual reproduction. When I had a chance to travel, shortly after the August 9th election, to their offices in Dallas, one of the branches that I had a chance to see was Pat Carmichael's division, and they were doing some things that to me were pretty incredible, although technology is continuing to leap in very incredible directions. But it sure seemed like it's called Arc Engine, and I'm going to let Pat get into it. But Jerry Fawcett, say hello to Jerry Fawcett. Jerry is also one of the principal architects that are working with us out of HKS on the ballpark, and so in looking at that, it sure seemed like it's something that this city, not only with our ballpark, which would be of particular benefit for, but also as we continue to develop not only the downtown area but other parts of our city. But this, at least my light bulb, principally turned on with our downtown area. The HKS folks came in this afternoon about 3 in order to maximize the use of their time. I asked Joe Smith to help gather some of the development community and potential both developers and owners to come down and spend an hour and a half in looking at this piece of equipment, software, and kind of giving us some comments on them. Once we learn and get a more of a familiarity with what this is, then it would be my intent to visit with them and try to get some cost estimates for us to be able to acquire what I would say would be the foundation on which things can be built. Ballpark is one. John Flake was a part of the group that was down there this afternoon about adding perhaps their building or buildings, the marina. We had John Godin who was there with some of their projects. So, we haven't formalized by any means this, and, obviously subject to the council's interest, wouldn't formalize any of it, but there's a general direction that we're hoping we're able to go. It is a terrific tool that I think would put us in the vanguard of being able to work in the development area and also in the planning area. So with that introduction, Pat, feel free to add to, subtract from. The show's yours, and you can tell me if what time you may want to take questions. I'll just sort of leave that up to you and however you want to do it.
Okay. Well, I'll start off by just jumping right into the environment. While it loads here, this is an environment that we've been working on for about 7 or 8 years. We started in late 1997, building on top of several platforms of gaming software, but we took it well beyond where the gaming world is. But it's still a software that you run around in self-discovery. Architecture and development and complex sites are hard to communicate to people what the aspects of the design or design intent, the cultural impact, the economic impact is to the community, and how to present that to a group of people so that they have a level of understanding of what real architectural design is and what the intent is. I mean, you can normally look at pictures and boards and windows and and things in a flat 2D environment, and it's hard to understand really on a personal level what that space is and what the intention is of how that would impact with large groups of people, small groups of people, the traffic coming in and out of the facility, what the impact is for sight lines, security, and so many other aspects that go into it that's hard to look at in any other venue than in a 3D world like this. We like to call this personal self-discovery, mainly because you can walk up to any aspect of it and just
Kind of
look at
point
it.
out to them, excuse me for interrupting, Pat, kind of point out to them, you're controlling this.
Yeah, I'm in a live interactive mode. I mean, I'm looking over here, I'm looking over there. I go where I want, or I go where my mouse points. You can look at a lot of different aspects of the environment that you normally would just never see until you built the site. And if there are constraints or limitations or impact in some way to somebody that you normally wouldn't see, you can have a level of understanding between people and trades and such that you just don't get any other way. We use it as a design tool also to help prototype quickly. Time is money when you're building facilities such as this or any other size, really, all the way down to a residence. The longer it takes to try something, didn't work, and then rebuild it or have issues of a pipe going through a wall that you didn't need to be going through the wall. I mean, structural assets like that show up. Case in point, I mean, imagine their surprise when they found the beam going through the window. It's just something that wasn't thought of several years ago even. You just didn't have this aspect of being able to economically produce a model of this detail and present it without very special considerations of expense and equipment, time, personnel, software, that now we can produce extremely economically and very quickly. It helps us rapidly prototype a lot of different design decisions that you just normally would have to kind of shoot from the hip without a lot of input from other sources. We can take a collaborative approach to the design process and bring a lot of different people and stuff into the design to get opinions and ideas of how to do things better. One of the things that we're talking also to North Little Rock about is like having a city model similar to what we've done in other cities, to where it could be used as a resource for other developers to look at impact of their development on the adjacent areas feasibility, sight lines, once again, traffic modes and other things that can be modeled and tested rapidly and inexpensively once you're built into the environment. This would be an ongoing resource for North Little Rock because it would be something that everybody contributes to that comes into the city. Plus, you could also help you assess impact, design, sightlines, etc., that are normally very hard to determine, and the quality and design of the future plans and for the city.
This is Dallas, and that's a building in Dallas that's under construction. Is that not correct?
That's right. This building is about 50% complete right now. And correcting for the site views, so you actually have the real site angle that you would see like if you were standing there. And of course, people in this facility used it to show the people that were fixed to spend a lot of money on a condo exactly what the city's views and stuff were. But that works at a lot of different scales as well. It also helped to show that the people in the adjacent facilities wouldn't be just completely dwarfed by this thing, that it met the fabric of the community, and that it was able to be, understood and seen at a lot of different levels that wasn't overpowering or encumbering upon, their privacy. So there are a lot of different issues that can be covered with models like this.
What about transportation?
Transportation can be modeled for congestion, the number of vehicles that can be transported within a given area length of time, and traffic control. You can actually model the traffic control with lights. I mean, we can actually have the cars stop when the light's red, and you can see how the congestion stops with the X number of cars coming in. There's lots of different venues of opportunity once you have a model like this. And of course, our proposal is that you always have a model, a 3D model as you go nowadays, because it becomes such a valuable resource down the line to the access, maintenance, and control, and facilities management of the facility and building as well. It actually is a 3D world, though. As you see, there's a lot of polygons. Polygons are what make up all those little individual objects. And but that also means that we can modify it and change it on the fly. You're not tied to any one design or set building. You could do all the existing buildings and then tear them down and build a new building just like you would out there on the real site. Any questions?
One of the things I know that we were talking about that one presentation that was made to the school board.
Yes.
On that ballpark.
Yes.
If you give me a little bit of that story, I don't know if you want to pull up that visual, but one of the things that was brought up in the earlier session today, talked about how that this visual caused you'll enjoy this ballpark, football park in Texas, that by seeing what they were wanting to have, the school district, and this is the park, actually did something entirely different than what they had originally intended. Just take them through a little bit of the story, Pat, if you would, on what they wanted to do originally when the presentation was made about the ballpark and how they were going to duplicate just simply the other side and what they ended up with.
Well, the discussion had early on is just to echo a design like they have of the aluminum stands over on the other side with the press box. And then as time went on and there were several discussions made down the line, we brought this presentation from our design architects based upon the scale and the size of the community and the scale and the size of the high school, that this would be a fitting addition to their program. And when you're up against a bunch of other people with 24 by 36 inch pictures on a board, and then you whip out a 110 inch screen with this on it, and yet you can actually walk through it and experience it, it becomes quite compelling.
Show them how you looked at the sight lines. That one of the things that in the concession area, how you could visually see where the field was, and remember that conversation.
One of the big issues they had was in the stadium that they have over there across the way, as you see, once you're out of the stand and you're down in the concession areas behind it, you have no clue what's going on. And plus also, This is the typical high school scenario. If you go out to your high school, I'm sure that everybody's crowded up in the concourse areas between the concession and the circulation back up into the stands, thereby missing about 2/3 or more or all of the football game. I can't tell you how many times I've asked my daughter who won, and she just looked at me. You know, she saw Betty Sue. But this way you can actually be there, visit the concessions, and still see the football stadium out here. And that was a big selling point of the presentation.
One of the things that I wanted him to show on this one is where the school board sits.
Well, that was actually the other model.
Was that the other?
Yeah, that was the other one. That's got the sky missing, but
They had a skybox for the school board. Okay.
But they probably a good third of the meeting was in the discussion of where their seats were in the press box. But it was humorous anyway. It was a very close-knit group, and they enjoyed being together, obviously. Worked well. This was originally...
the Texas football stadium, high school, right?
Yeah, this is high school, Grand Prairie High School. And this is their press box. This is built and complete now. But they made us push all the chairs together for them to sit together because they wanted to be able to directly interact. We had them split 3 and 3 with the aisle going down the middle, and they made us move that once they saw that.
Where's the press sit in that?
They're in that little bitty. No. There's all sorts of press. The coaches' area is mainly on the bottom row down there, so they're pretty well segregated from the different groups. But the press is probably that little room up here. Isn't that the way it works?
I think we'd have FOI issues if...
But they also do have a nice camera area. This is where they'd put the cameras and such in here to look out into the field, take the shots and all. But this way we were the first people to run up the alleyway back to the high school and onto the field. So and it's amazing, how immersive it is. As you can see, part of the technology when it goes awry is that you lose the sky and stuff like that. So it's not totally.
That's not the way Texas sky looks.
No. Not unless on the real hot days it probably bubbles like that.
Anybody, have y'all got any questions in terms of what this can do and what it can't do? And one thing I want to remind everyone is what you can do is control your actual visual perspective by the mouse, if I'm not mistaken.
We can also take these images like this and present it to video, to where you make video clips about 100 times faster than the conventional way of rendering out frame by frame of animations of models like this. A 5-minute video takes us basically 5 minutes. A 5-minute video is about, at 30 frames a second, you'd have to render out 30 frames times 30 seconds times 5 minutes.
Now you came in and actually took aerial photographs of Dallas and the skyline and the buildings, and how did you put this together, and how long would something like this take?
This one, the input of the model environment that you see here took a little over a week to do. The actual model was produced in-house, but it was done in several groups. The lower section in the hotel was done by a different group that did the tower, and then the adjacent tower over there was added later. So there was actually almost 3 phases of modeling that went on that we actually did the studies on. And that was done probably over a period of about 6 weeks. But it was only 3 different people doing it, so as the information became available, they modeled it and got it into the end. So it's a fairly rapid tool to prototype design. It's faster than just about anything else that we have in our office to produce visuals like this.
Alderman Bryant, do you have a question?
That was fascinating.
Yeah. Any council member have any questions? It is something that it actually puts you there, and then can build on top of what our city or any city for that measure, and can use it as a foundation to add buildings, take buildings away. You know, when we were discussing with the arena about the site interruptions that might be caused by the Enclave, which is that 260-unit apartment complex, you know, this would have, you know, given us an easy visual of exactly what that would do, what it wouldn't do, and how it might otherwise affect us. I know we had chamber folks there, downtown partnership. It sure seemed like at least an opportunity to go forward. And you know, if there are any questions of any council member, we'd sure be happy to try to respond. All right. Anything else? And you want to add? What else we want to cover?
We have the. I think it's interesting that we can show the interactivity of the environment. This was one that we did for the developer to understand how sight lines could change when you change from hockey to basketball. It's a fully interactive environment also, that you can push buttons and make things move and stop and go, rewind, and have various scenarios going at the same time while you're in the environment. I guess the most important thing is the ongoing resource that you'd have developer participation in the, particularly like a city map and the city environment between North Little Rock and even Little Rock downtown, is that you could have an interaction between everybody in all this and build up the resource with their participation as well. And I mean, that's the way we've done it. We've brought all the developer resources with each project that we've had, and it's worked real well. And and an amazing array of participation and cooperativeness with the other developers and everyone, because they understand with the different buildings that are going in.
Why don't you put me up on the top of that roof there and give me a 360 as to what the skyline of Dallas looks like? Can you do that?
Yep. We actually had the Secret Service do this too, because they like the sight lines for like motorcades coming through and such. They wanted to see what the impact of this building and this position and next to the premier hotels. Plus, this is probably a view that next to nobody will ever see. And this is where the
so
Ghost Bar will
is that the American Airlines Arena?
Yeah, that's the American Airlines Center right there, where the Mavericks play.
And how much of this building is finished? How much is the building that we're on is now finished?
Right now, most of the exterior skin is up. Probably about 75-80% of the exterior skin is up. Now this lower tower over here on the right was started later because they added that on after they sold out the left tower. And so it's only maybe 50% skinned, weathered in. And they'll be probably 100% weathered in probably by first quarter next year, and then they'll start the interior finish out. And like I said, all of it sold on the condos.
Question, Mayor.
Murray?
Okay. Could you look at the surrounding area for blending purposes from a perspective of how your building will fit with the other buildings from blending, like colors and so forth?
We did a color study on this building in the daylight. I just don't have that one here.
Okay.
But we have a daylight view that shows some of the, because I mean a lot of the discussion was how stark this thing was going to be, being white like this. And but they actually toned it down a little bit.
All right. Could you then actually take whatever photographs you had made and or imagery from a satellite and put in the screen,
right,
to actually show the
Well, this is,
physical.
like this one right here, the building
Okay.
right there, that's the actual photograph of the building
Okay.
at this time of day. And so therefore, we're actually looking at some guy's window right there that is on that tower. And most of these buildings downtown were photo composite. You could do every building that way. This particular model, the client didn't want to compete architecturally in this presentation. So the massing that you see there is correct, even though all those buildings right there don't exist yet. But the massing of all this out here with the apartments adjacent to it and everything are correct. We actually had several people, come in and look at the different sight lines here on the corridors between the apartments and such, just so they could see what kind of impact, the building was going to have.
Mayor, are you contemplating this as a strictly city tool for planning purposes and for design, or are you contemplating a cooperative effort with developers, or?
Yeah, I guess what I'm thinking about is to have the basics of the at least beginning with the urban area. Maybe give the view that Little Rock has given us, because I know that's one of the things that we tout as a tremendous value, and have perhaps the foundation. And then, with somebody like the Flake Project and Hilburn Project, they come in and then they would work separately, use the foundation that we have in terms of the visuals of the skyline, for example, and then put their building and use it whatever way they might want to use it. Now, in terms of the ballpark, that we do something similar to what's here, and that we utilize that to market different things, the skyboxes, those kinds of things that we need to work with the travelers on, trying to be able to show what we could do in terms of what like Coca-Cola or Dr. Pepper, how we put their their logo on something. In terms of the marketing for not only the advertising but also the sweet sales.
Okay. Then would you also use it for, say, a mall design or architectural, I guess?
Anything that would, at least in my mind, and
Riverfront area?
anything that somebody, like the area that I would hope that we would consider doing, and obviously a lot of this would be subject to cost, because we're in just discussions right now. This technology with regard to HKS, they've got other programs out there, but Pat, you might tell us a little bit of what we talked about earlier this afternoon, what HKS has got that's different than who your competitors, if you have any, would.
Right. A couple things then, just right off along the deal of the Dr. Pepper deal, that's something we discussed earlier, is like the light standards that you see here, they were actually redesigned to facilitate that you would be out here walking in, so the promenade into the park, as you walked up there, you see the Dr. Pepper sign, the sponsor sign all the way through. Then once in the park, you see the sign all the time. So the exposure's to every person from all angles. And that was simply a modification of the design to incorporate the Dr. Pepper logo up there. There's lots of architectural opportunities that you can explore in this environment for sponsorship, for branding, to help pay for the facilities, help pay for the long-term care, help pay for the 3D model. There's just lots of opportunities in there to do that. Let me zoom up here, then I'll explain the technology, why we're different.
Apparently you didn't tell him I'm not a big fan of billboards and signs.
Alderman Witcher is a big fan of billboards and signs in the right place, in the right size, and in the right, right color. That I would say.
Well, these, as you can tell, they're not overwhelming. They're blended in quite well, and I don't think you would walk away from this building with a bleeding retina burn-in of Dr. Pepper, where some facilities you do. So, it's something that you can look at for sure. Right quick, I'm going to show you just kind of an overview. You'll notice there all the little lines, those are called polygons. Each little line breaks down. If you go down to the lowest end down here is a triangle. What we do different from anybody else that's out there, each one of those little lines is a triangle that makes up geometry. We push more geometry than any other application out there on a PC, period. We've had lots of people test us. NVIDIA, the graphic card maker, has attested that we're number one. ATI, the other graphic card maker, has tested that we're number one. We're actually development partners with ATI and NVIDIA. The game engine company that we use, which is Unreal Technology, our tools that we have developed over the last 8 years add functionality to their game engine. Our tools are patented. They're actually protected because they're special and unique, and they're exclusive to HKS. The other packages out there that are similar to ours are like Virtools, Quantum 3D, Eon Reality. They just can't keep up with the number of polygons that we push, along with coupled the graphic fidelity that you see here. We've had several people come in and look at how various other applications could work within ours, but they won't work because we have too much geometry and it chokes down everybody else's system. It's taken us 8 years to figure out how to make that work right. I don't say that we're smarter than everybody else, but we hit the right button in the right. So,
Alderman?
Okay. All right. This last week, Mr. Height and I looked at a particular program with interest. Those folks to contact Todd Larson, who's our economic development director. You probably met him today. One of the things that particular program did, and I'm curious if maybe you might have the capacity and or something along this line, it could drop maps and tell you what counts are, what highway counts are in a specific location.
it would drop what now?
It would give you highway counts, car counts, at a specific location currently, and some demographic information from Census Bureau regarding where people might shop and the area that they might draw from. You might be able to draw from for a specific location. Do you have anything?
We have
or
done.
is this strictly a design package?
This is strictly a visual program.
Okay.
We wrote a database back end that ties into several applications that we're working with right now. We did earlier for Homeland Security and what's called Emergency Response 1, to where we could count the number of cars coming into a hospital emergency room after a weapon of mass destruction. But that was a separate application that we simply pointed to, that then we read the data and then placed an object where it told us to put it. But we did it in real time. But it's not done by our application, so that's actually a third-party add-on type cost, expense, and programming.
Okay. Anybody else? Well, we sure appreciate not only the good work, Jerry, that y'all are doing for us. We're still looking to get that first bid package out here. Went out today. And I don't know if you had a chance to see the site, but our Public Works Department has been at work. And we want to make it a whole lot different, come a year from now. If there are no other questions, Pat, we sure thank you for coming up. Jerry, the same. And let me just take, while we let them deset, let me take a 2-minute recess, and then we'll let them break, and then we'll get back to our business. Here, 2-minute recess.
Hard on the eyes. Hard on the eyes.
Melinda, you going on the 19th?
When do you get set for a big Christmas?
Actually,
She's over in Belmont. She'll be home. But all of them will be around. By this one, it's Thursday. My business down there, I can help you. So,
We lost Alderman Gibson, but he'll be back shortly. Alderman Gibson off from Bryan. Let me just go ahead and call us to order. We've got I know without Alderman Gibson and Bryan, it's not my intent to call the budget tonight. What I would do is ask the council members to look it over if you hadn't had a chance to already. And also we'll open up the microphone here in just a second. Anybody that might want to comment on it, I'm going to ask Mr. Sisson to briefly introduce it, and then we'll open it for public comment. I'm going to also call a public hearing for the beginning of the next city council meeting on the 22nd. Unless there's any reason otherwise, I'd encourage the council members to look at it with the idea of trying to bring it up for adoption at the next meeting. Of course, as you know, we're not mandated to adopt it until the second meeting, or the last meeting of January, so it's not a requirement, but those of you who've been on the council for a while, we always try to have that in place by the first of the year, and if there's not a reason otherwise, I hope we can do that again. But if not, then we'll deal with it as we come. Mr. Sisson, just give it a brief introduction, and then I'll open it for any public input.
Okay, Mayor, the budget you have before you on the ordinance was filed with the city clerk on November the 30th.
Friday that week, each one of you present this booklet that at least we believe it makes it a little bit easier to understand. It's separated into different funds. Real briefly on the general fund is where most of our operations come out of, the police, the fire, emergency services. In that is where our sales tax goes. And in that particular one, the only increase we're having to speak of is from the city and county sales tax. And half of the city sales tax goes into the capital improvements. As I say, this is several different sections of this booklet. Rather than go through it, I'd be happy to answer any of it, or I'll be happy to elaborate on it.
And let me add that in terms of where we are, as Mr. Sisson indicated, the only additional revenue that we're projecting of any consequence over this past year was in the sales tax area. I think the projections are based on 5%. We think that's somewhat conservative, but certainly achievable. This year we were 11% over the previous year in the county, or
In the city.
in the city. Well,
County's a little over 6.
go ahead and tell us what our projections were this year. It was 11% on the city sales tax, or was it? Help straighten me out.
We initially projected about 4%. It is coming in. The city is 11. A little over 11, and the county's a little over 6.
In terms of over what it was the previous year.
That's correct.
We projected 4%, so we're projecting 5% this year. We've got a great deal of optimism that we'll reach that. We hope that we're in the same ballpark, literally, as we were this year, and so that we exceed the 5%. We're not projecting any at this point, although we remain hopeful that we can come in like we've done in past years and address raises for our employees. The only raises that are in there are the step and grade raises that are those that what our employees are entitled. Those of us that are topped out, at this point there's no recommended raise, nor is there any in the budget. But again, we remain hopeful that we can come in somewhere during the first year and make some recommendation to the council. We're not nearly as challenged as the county. We have some legislation on for tonight that I'll explain in a minute or two, having to do with the jailing and exactly what that might do for us. But those, that issue remains with what we are going to do both as a city, but even more importantly, what we'll have to do as a county and how we look at both short-term and long-term answers on that. The short-term answer is what we're recommending tonight. Long-term, in all likelihood, will require input from the voters. I know I see Scott Miller out there, and Scott is with the group that is working to try to help find support and look for solutions to the jailing issue. One additional employee is being recommended, and that person will be, if the council authorizes it, although the money's in the budget, we're not looking at the quota ordinance tonight, would be an additional person out at the hydro plant. That plant, as the years now go by, will in all likelihood become much more valuable because the cost of power, it certainly looks like, will be going up, and we'll deal a little bit with an update on that when Mr. Gertz talks about the special piece of legislation, and it's not my intent to call that tonight, but it's certainly my intent to deal with that at the next council meeting. Mr. Sisson, anything else?
I think that's all, and I think most of the department heads are here. If something I can't answer on the budget, we'll be happy to answer anything you have. I was just going to ask the mayor, have you got all the departments satisfied?
I don't know if "satisfied" is the word, but they're not. They're not raising flags or marching in the aisles at this point. So, I think we feel like it's a workable budget. We as in normal years, we didn't get everything that we asked for and from the department heads, but I think we can deliver the services at a level that the citizens will have come to expect and enjoy. The cost of our sanitation is somewhere in the $4 million range. I think we all know that that there's no charge that's being passed on to our citizens for that. It started out when we first adopted our penny sales tax at $3 million, so there's been a fairly significant, another $1 million on top of $3 million. But we feel like it's a workable budget, and we're not at this point having to recommend any the reduction of any employees or any significant change of business, and we hope to continue on with that. Any other questions or comments before I open it up to the microphone? With that, microphone's open. Anyone care to come up and make any comments?
Scott Miller, well, not here with the jail thing. Just want to make sure I understood in the press that this council and your office, Mayor, has put the $400,000 back in the sidewalk budget. Do I understand that correctly?
It's at a $400,000 level.
At a $400,000?
Right.
I just wanted to compliment this council, your office as well. I was here last year talking about the decrease in that budget last year. There's not been a soul here asking for that money back. There hasn't been a parade of people up here. Y'all have come in here, lived up to your promise. You said a year ago that if the ballpark money didn't need it, and we didn't need it for the shops of North Hills, that you would put a significant part of that back. I think it's important to let the viewing audience know that when this council and this mayor makes a promise, they stick with it. They need to have the confidence of that. And I just want to compliment you and thank you for that. Even though not a soul has even asked for that money back, it would have been easy to bury it someplace and never show it up and nobody ever know. But that's the reason politics and city government is that much better on this side of the river and in this city than the county, and I want to thank you for that.
Not at all, and we're hopeful that the council will adopt that. We like sidewalks, and we like our community, and I know we, once the sales tax was adopted, started investing fairly significantly, and we're happy to be able to come back and make this recommendation. Microphone's still open. All right, I'm going to recess this public hearing then until 7:05 at the next council meeting, and with that, I'll go ahead. Will you go ahead and read while we're at it? Just go ahead and read 0596, Ms. Marshall, or. Just go ahead and read it.
This is the ordinance adopting a budget for the 2006 fiscal year for the city of North Little Rock.
And why don't we, if we would, unless there's an objection, go ahead and take it to second reading, and then I'll hold it, and then Alderman Height has a question.
Move to suspend the rules and place it on second reading.
Is there a second? On the motion? Ms. Marshall, on the motion?
Gibson.
Yes.
Bryant.
Yes.
Robinson. Yes. Thomas.
Yes.
Berry.
Yes.
Parker.
Yes.
Height.
Yes.
And Witcher.
Yes.
All right, go ahead and read it, and then I'll hold it.
This is the ordinance adopting a budget for the 2006 fiscal year for the city of North Little Rock.
All right, now I'll hold it. Alderman Height?
This question doesn't necessarily have to do with this year's or the 2006 budget, but it's my knowledge that the Clinton Library has plans for developing that bridge across the Arkansas River, and I've gotten some information from a couple of members of a Mike Club that I'm in that Mr. Rutherford was stating that they were waiting on starting that bridge construction as far as making it biker and pedestrian friendly on North Little Rock, waiting on to see what we're going to do. And I'm under the impression that we've already got money set aside for development of that, our end of the bridge when that time does occur.
That's not correct. We at this point don't have any funds set aside. I have been in communication with Mr. Rutherford. I have had some information that I believe was Dr. Lambert had relayed. The Clinton Foundation have funds set aside to have an ability for folks who come over to get off on the ground in North Little Rock. Now, it's true that we don't have a final structure or structures or a way that we want that bridge to ultimately integrate with our city, except initially we have communicated to the foundation that we want it to come off in our park and generally head in an upriver direction, so that it will be accessible to the loop that we have in terms of our 14-mile bike loop on both sides of the river, as you know, the Judge's Bridge on across Murray Lock and Dam is progressing. And so they have not, to my knowledge, designed exactly what that's to look like, but there are funds available. Mr. Rutherford assured us to have some landing. They are waiting to have any kind of input that we might want to choose to give, and we're working on, you know, trying to do something like that in a way that is timely and doesn't slow down the construction of the bridge. They have just communicated to us that, you know, that they are looking to do that beginning next year, and I'm not sure exactly when, but we have not had an opportunity, I know I haven't, to see what the overall design looks like. We hope to have some access to those documents or that information in the very near future, and then we're going to work in a timely way with the Clinton Foundation to make sure that the landing in our side, you know, until we have a broader development plan down there and people who want to do that development, you know, that we have a nice way to get off and for people to enjoy the North Bank. And then when we come up with an actual development, I know Mr. Glover, who owns some of the property, the private property that is in that area, was a part of this meeting where Mr. Rutherford shared these thoughts with us. So we're going to work with the Glover family, with any others that have an interest down there. But to me, generally speaking, you know, there'll be a generic, I guess, for lack of a better phrase, but yet very aesthetically pleasing way to get off of that bridge for pedestrians, bicyclers, folks that want to do that, and yet I think all of us feel that when actual development begins there, that bridge, that off capability of that bridge will be perhaps modified in order to accommodate the maximum use of that end of the bridge, and then in addition to whatever development might occur there. So that's a 10-cent answer to maybe a nickel's question, but we're not 50-cent answer. We're not going to let. It's not our intent to let anything that we want to do slow down the construction of that bridge in any way. Now, let me just add this to the council while we're talking about bridges. You know, Senator Lincoln, Blanche Lincoln, was instrumental, in addition to the remaining of our congressional delegation, to secure $3 million allocation for the Junction Bridge. That, coupled with what we have already, we're somewhere in the $5 million plus range for the Junction Bridge. And then talking to the judge, we've got every optimism, and you may have seen that in the paper, that we can begin construction on that bridge, the first part. Well, actually, plans finalized, go to bid sometime in the summer, and construction start next fall on the Junction Bridge. So I would dare say that both of those bridges ought to be under construction next year, and that the Junction and that the Murray Bridge will be finished about this time next year, perhaps by now.
August of 06.
All right. Okay. Then we'll hold the budget until the first council meeting. Let's go to the special call. Would you please read the special call?
Honorable members of the City Council, dear members of the City Council, this is to advise that we have called a special council meeting of the North Little Rock City Council for 7:05 p.m. on December the 12th, 2005 at the North Little Rock School Administration Building, North Little Rock, Arkansas. The following will be on the agenda: a resolution appropriating additional funds for expenses related to the Plum Point Development Project, sponsored by Mayor Patrick H. Hayes, and it has been duly signed by all 7 aldermen and alderwomen.
Let me, without having read that, it was my intent, and I know I had a chance to visit with manager of our electric department, Joe Gerson. Joe, you want to walk to the microphone if you wouldn't mind. I wanted to get this before the council. If I remember correctly, the council had authorized an expenditure up to $115,000. Is that the correct amount?
That is correct.
$115,000 in pursuing the preliminary work and cost associated with that, for us to try to decide whether we needed to be and either needed to or wanted to be involved in the Plum Point coal fire electric plant. There have been a couple things that have occurred that have perhaps increased the likelihood of our share of the expenses. We had Jonesboro and Conway dropped out. Their dropping out was very understandable. Didn't affect the benefits or the possible benefits of the plant. They dropped out because of their information they received with regard to what upgrades would need to be completed on transmission before they could take power from Plum Point, and their upgrades reflected somewhere in the $60–70 million range, or maybe more. I'll let Mr. Gertsch comment on that, where our response was like in the $4, $5, $6 million range. So we were significantly less, and that's in large measure because we're on the interstate of transmission lines, whereas and even Osceola, I understand, but whereas Jonesboro and Conway aren't on interstate transmission lines, and would have to build an interstate to their communities, where we only have to build maybe an off-ramp, and so that keeps us in the interest column, I would say, but at the same time, because they dropped out, perhaps increases the likelihood of our pro rata share of some front end costs that are now being would be shared by fewer rather than more. The thing that continues to keep us vitally interested, as I see it, in this, and I don't intend to call this for a vote, but I asked Mr. City Attorney to put this on the agenda for next council meeting so it can be considered as part of the regular business at the 22nd, is that the cost of power, projected power out of this facility, is somewhere around $40 a megawatt hour. We are paying somewhere close to that right now, but that's delivered. We might recall that Conway and West Memphis, with their new contracts, are paying in the close to $60 a megawatt hour range, and that's why we expect when we negotiate our new contract that our cost of purchase power is going to go up significantly. The cost of transmission we anticipate from Plum Point would be somewhere in the $5 a megawatt hour range, so we would be looking at power beginning in 2010 at the $45 plus range for power out of Plum Point delivered, and because of that, at least at this point, $15 a megawatt hour, the cost savings would be significant, and yet there are some issues that the council will have to weigh. One, obviously, is whether or not to invest another $60,000 to keep us in the hunt. Number two, some of the risk issues that may be associated with it. For example, one that was raised is obviously where it's being constructed is in a seismic area that it could be subject to damage by earthquakes. So, in any event, with that introduction, and with recognizing that we're not going to actually deal with this until the next council meeting, I want to let Mr. Gertsch add to, subtract from, and then stand for any questions, so that we all can be at least familiar enough now at the next council meeting where we'll feel comfortable in calling whether or not we want to invest another $60,000 to stay in the hunt. Mr. Gertsch?
Well, I'd just point out to the council that the opportunity to invest in a coal-fired generating plant doesn't come along very often. The last coal-fired plant that was built in Arkansas was an Independence unit that Energy built. Was back in I think it came online back in the early 1980s. So the plant itself it represents a significant savings to us if we in fact decide to purchase an interest in it. I've estimated the savings for us would range anywhere between $11 and $15 million a year. So you have to weigh the potential savings with the investment that you make up front in order to make a decision. So we've invested $115,000, and we're looking at actually we've only invested at this point around $80,000. We still got some of the original 115 that you allocated remaining. But this is a unique opportunity. We should take advantage of it if all the issues that are presently outstanding are resolved, and we're going to have to spend a little bit more money in order to resolve those issues.
One of the reasons that we're here now again, and when Joe and I visited last week about this, it's anticipated at the current level that 115 will be expended by the end of the year.
Well, right now it will be expended by this month. It will be gone by the 1st of December. It's essentially gone. I put the owner's engineer on hold, and we've expended just a few dollars in legal costs since then. So we're at a point where we have to make a decision in terms of expending additional funds.
Okay, but there's no reason that we can't wait till the next council meeting, I don't, or tell me.
Well, I would anticipate I will go over. If you wait till, I will go over in December to finish this up if we do not, if the council doesn't allocate me some additional dollars.
All right, well, if we act on this on the 22nd in some way or another, then what's your position with regard to our 115 with that knowledge in mind?
We have approximately $26,000 of that remaining. I have not received invoices through the end of November. I think a substantial portion of that, probably on the order of 15 or 16,000, will be utilized in November. So that will leave $10,000 remaining. Since that time, the city of Conway has dropped out, and the city of West Memphis has dropped out. So that means our percentage share of these costs has gone up. So to get us at a point where we have the agreements that we're working on now outstanding, and perhaps pay some of our initial transmission costs for studies, we'll have to expend I'm saying on the order of $40,000 or so before the end of this year. And now we won't receive the bill until January, but we will have expended that amount.
Well, I just want to make sure the council, and I know Alderman Thomas has got a question, I want to make sure the council knows that, if we meet, if we don't act tonight, and I don't intend for us to, and we wait till the 22nd, then there's a reasonable likelihood we'll exceed the 115. If we decide to put the brakes on our participation on the 22nd, then we'll still probably exceed the 115, but we won't go up to the additional 60,000 range. Is that?
I would say that is true.
Okay,
Yes.
so I just want to make sure that we're all aware of what's transpiring in terms of what we're doing right now. Alderman Thomas?
I guess my question is, what's the advantage to wait? What is to gain in the next 2 weeks? What are we going to learn in the next 2 weeks?
Well, actually, there may be some things that we learn in terms of what the electric department might learn. But I know that there's at least one council member that would like to look at it a little bit more in depth before we make a decision on that, and that's fine with me. If the council wanted to go forward, I wouldn't have a problem with it. But I know in this decision, it's certainly okay with me that we wait till the 22nd. I support this. I hope the council will support it when we go forward on the 22nd. But yet, I want to make sure if there's anything out there that anybody has any question on, then they get comfortable with it. And if they can't, then we'll see what happens on the vote.
Well, I just would not want the council to, my original charge with this project was that I would come back to the council when it looked like I would exceed the funds that have been allocated by this body. So I'm here today, and I'm informing you of that. It would be, it's difficult when you're in a cost-sharing arrangement for one party to say, I'm just going to pull out of this until my council makes a decision on what we're going to do. I mean, we're more or less in the project or we're out of the project. So just as long as this body realizes that there is a possibility that by the end of December that we would exceed that 115,000.
Well, one of the things too that I wanted Mr. Gert to come up here and visit with us about is to give the council a chance to ask any questions that you might have. And I know that I'd heard that the size of the plant, that there's been a change in the sizing of the plant and that it was downsized. Now, I hadn't heard that. Do you know anything about that, Mr.
No,
Gersh?
sir, the size of the plant has not been downsized, and what I would propose is that I'll present either something next council meeting, or in the interim before that, I'll also provide you with a report, and I'll pretty much lay out some of the issues that we have to resolve. There's some pros to this plant, there's some cons to this plant, and we'll have to make a decision here fairly quickly.
What's the size? The size of the plant is 600 and some odd megawatts?
650 megawatts.
650 megawatts, and that's been the size from the get-go.
Yes, sir.
And so, to your knowledge, because I know when it had been shared with me that they had heard the size of the plant had been downsized, and I hadn't heard that, and I didn't think it had. And our proposal, at least in terms of what we've indicated, is that if we go forward, we're interested in 60 megawatts.
That's correct.
And that's roughly 10% of the plant.
That's right.
And that there is a general figure of $130 million, if I'm not mistaken, or tell us a little bit about the proposed cost.
I mean, just ballpark numbers on it.
Right.
Our capital investment, including interest during construction, would be on the order of magnitude of $130 million. And that figure is based on the present evaluation by the owner's engineer of construction cost.
And that $130 million means that we would get 60 megawatts or 10% of the plant except with the only additional charges would be for fuel cost and operation and maintenance allocation. Would that?
That's correct. I mean, you would, during the once the plant becomes operational, we would still incur O&M costs, and you know, the $130 million essentially covers our fixed costs, and so whatever payments we would make towards that $130 million during the course of the life of the bond issue, that would be essentially represent our fixed costs. The variable cost would include fuel, it would include your O&M costs, those sorts of things. But the dollar figure you mentioned earlier in terms of the cost per megawatt hour that would come out of the plant, that did include all costs, both fixed and variable.
On the $45.
That's correct.
What I want to do is just make sure the council is in the same seat that we're in as we go forward on this. It's a big decision, but it has large dollar implications as we transition, from virtually a sole source supplier like Energy and now Duke, to perhaps having our own portfolio of energy, which would include, the hydro, perhaps an ownership interest in one or more plants, as well as maybe exploring being a part of a co-op, which is out there. So, this is something that we're going to live with pretty much all next year, or at least a good part of it. I don't believe we'll have a Duke or an Energy that will come in and give us the kind of offer that we've enjoyed, at least during the 17 years that I've been at City Hall. Alderman Witcher and then Alderman Height.
Okay, all right. Mayor, I will let the council know, in this particular transaction, I'm going to have to abstain because the company I work for is involved with the transaction. I do have two comments for you, though. The next step that Mr. Gersh is asking for is for a transmission study. Now, they have identified some constraints in the transmission system, and what this will do, Joe, and tell me if I say it wrong, is it will actually put a cost figure to curing those constraints and what they would have to do physically in order to cure constraints.
That's correct.
And that's important because it will give us a hard line dollar figure within 10% or so of our total cost for the transmission fix to get the power from the Plum Point plant to our receiving substations. That is an important cost that you need to know on a long-term basis. The second thing is, as the mayor indicated, a diversified fuel mix. And for those of you who are not familiar with it, he alluded to it, that being hydro, purchase power, and ownership of of a generating capacity with a different generating background is a smart long-term plan for stability of utility rates. If we had some gas, if we depended solely on gas like was proposed about 12, 14 years ago, we would be in a world of hurt right now. But at the same time, if we had it, and with our other plants and with purchase power, you could even those things out, and that's what helps keeps you from hitting those high points in demand periods and keeping a steady flow of both revenues and costs. And so, I would encourage you to study very hard this proposal as Joe lays out the pros and cons. And there are some negative aspects of it. So. But that's all I'm going to be able to say about it.
A couple of things. Mayor, you indicated earlier in your comments that Jonesboro had dropped out.
Yes.
And Conway had dropped out.
Yes.
And West Memphis has dropped out.
Was West Memphis in?
They, at the time I spoke with you, they were in, and they just recently notified us.
And what about the city of Osceola?
The city of Osceola is in a very unique position. They have zero upgrade cost, principally because they're located right next to the plant. So their transmission costs are not.
But they in or out?
They're in at this point.
Okay.
I heard in the last few days that they were out.
No, sir, that's not true.
Okay. If what I've heard is true, then we would remain the only single entity, non-co-op member of this that's looking into purchasing this, right?
Is Benton still in?
Benton is looking at an ownership interest with a purchase power arrangement with the Missouri Joint Action Agency.
Which is something we could explore too.
It is something that we are exploring.
Right.
Okay. So should Osceola indeed drop out, leaving us as the only city in there, just considering the variable cost as operating that and fuel cost and everything, how's that going to affect our cost or our share of the variable cost if we're the only single entity in there, a non-co-op?
Well, in terms of our share of the variable cost, it really should not affect our share. And the reason I say that is LS Power, the developer, has offered to pick up the the additional megawatts in order to make the plant whole. Now, with regard to the development cost, and by that I mean the cost to get us to the point where we're ready to sign off on the agreements and move forward with the project, there's some legal costs and some owner's engineer costs there. We would end up picking up an additional share
And that'd be
those costs.
That could be substantial.
Well, if you have to put that in perspective of the plant. This is a $1.3 billion plant. The total identified legal costs from the beginning to get us to the point where we're ready to conclude the deal were identified between $200,000 and $700,000. So, we've actually expended a substantial portion of that, and other parties have picked up those costs. In terms of the total cost of the owner's engineer, it was on the order of magnitude of $1.9 million. And again, we haven't expended a very large portion of that, only several $100,000 on the order of $200,000. So if we move forward with the project in terms of those development costs, I would anticipate we would not continue in the same arrangement that we have now with the owner's engineer. We would have to work out some sort of an arrangement with the other owners that are separate and apart from LS Power in order to cover our owner's engineer cost.
Which is going to raise our legal cost if we have to work out some other arrangement, correct?
Well, that's a pretty straightforward arrangement. In terms of sharing those costs, I would think that would be minimal.
How does that one work?
Thank you. Yeah, Alderman Berry?
The question I have is, if we float this bond issue and we spend $130 million and this thing doesn't fly, what kind of insurance do we have that we're not going to be shopping with a bond issue out for $130 million shopping for electricity.
Well, that's, you're talking about credit issues with LS Power, and these are some of the issues that are addressed in the ownership agreements and the documents that we have to operate the plant. So, I guess if you're saying that, I see two scenarios where what you're describing could happen. The first being that, they go to develop the plant. We float our bond issue and we're putting money into the plant. And for some reason, that LS Power doesn't develop the plant. That, something happens and they just walk away from this project. What you have to realize, if they're walking away from this project and they have an ownership interest on the order of 50% or greater in the project, then they're walking away from substantially more money than we are. So when that happens, they borrowed money from lenders. Those lenders are not going to want this project to go down the tubes. So somebody's going to pick up the ball and carry it here in order to make sure this plant is built. But what you described is a risk that we will bear. Now, the other scenario would be one in which, we get this thing built and operating, and the thing's running, and an earthquake happens or some other catastrophic event happens, and the plant falls down around the ground, and what do we do then? Well, the way you address that issue is through insurance. And I have made inquiries into insurance. Insurance, I've been told from the agent that serves the hydro, insurance is available. He doesn't expect the cost would be inordinate, and he saw no reason why we wouldn't be able to acquire insurance. So, there's two scenarios there. I would suspect that there are probably others in which this, we could run into trouble with this unit. But those are the two principal concerns, and I think those just have to be addressed in the agreements and in our insurance.
Alderman Thomas?
I just wanted to say I certainly appreciate all the time that Mr. Gertz put in it, and I'm certainly going to follow his recommendation because I think he understands, he knows more about that than many of us on this council.
And rest assured, in my conversations with Joe and his involvement, his recommendation will not come without a great deal of effort, and that's why we wanted to do this, to keep the council informed of where we are up to the minute, and we'll listen to his continued presentation and then act on the $60,000 request and at the next meeting, and then move on from there based on what the council indicates. Anything else on this? Joe, thank you very much. And were you going to prepare something in writing, or were you just going to present it to council the next meeting?
I will prepare something in writing. I think it's probably important, given the gravity of the decision that will have to be made, that each of the council members has an opportunity to look over it before that particular council meeting. So I'll present it to you and allow you to give it to the councilman, and
okay.
When I come in, I'll lay it out.
Recognize that we're going to be early on this meeting, so the quicker you can get it, the better it'll be. One of the things that I want to make sure we understand is that and help me carry through with this, Joe. If all we're asking the council to do is to consider the likely need for up to an additional $60,000 in preliminary costs prior to us making a decision to authorize us to acquire an ownership interest. Run me briefly through the timetable that you feel that we'll be looking at. Let's assume that we'll vote to authorize the additional expenditure of funds. Just quickly give me and the council a timetable on when we will have to make a go or no-go decision then.
The developer has set a timetable for closing on this plan of February 15th. Now that puts some fairly significant time constraints on us. The goal right now is to have the asset purchase agreement, the management agreement, and participation agreements, which are three of the key agreements to us becoming a owner in the plant, have those wrapped up by the end of December. So I would expect that at the very first meeting in January, which I believe is January 9th, at that point we'll be at a decision-making point. We will have to make a decision at that point. Otherwise, there will not be sufficient time in order for us to either do a closing or make an arrangement with the Missouri Joint Action Agency.
Mr. Gertz, in this original project, either you or somebody, do I remember there was a payment that was due relatively early in this process before the bond issue? Is that correct?
It's not before the bond issue. It is at the same time as that we commit to the project, sign off on the asset purchase agreement and close. Well, I take that back. We would not. We would sign off on the asset purchase agreement in advance, but when we close is when that payment is due. So it would be, we would borrow the funds. It would not be a contribution that would be over and above our bond. It is factored in that 100.
What is that? What is that amount? Was it $2 million? Or?
It's $100 a kW. For us, it would be on the order of $6 million.
Okay. $6 million. That would be due February.
That's right.
Okay.
At the close.
Okay. And then the balance of it is that it's going to be a pretty good size, in the neighborhood of $130 million.
Well, the balance would be, there would be draws
Okay.
throughout the life of the construction of the project.
Okay.
So, we would not have to, now, it would most likely go into some sort of escrow account. They wouldn't be, it wouldn't be funds that would be available to us, but we would, they would be committed to the project.
So we're looking at, let me just get in my mind, that $6 million, give or take some, is due in February '06.
Right.
Okay, and the balance of it is due not long after that into, you got, if I guess, where's Mr. Sisson when I need him? He's behind you. The $130 million, we would then need to float that bond issue shortly after that fact or before that fact.
Oh, no, sir. Once, at the end of December, if these agreements are finalized, then we would have to proceed at that point in acquiring the funds through some sort of a bond issue. Now, we have estimated the schedule to do that would be on the order of 90 days. Well, obviously, if you look at the time frame between the end of December and February 15th, there's not 90 days in there. So either we can do some sort of an abbreviated approach to doing a bond issue, or we are going to have the date slide some number of weeks. And then the third alternative is that we can go with the Missouri Joint Action Agency. In that event, their closing requirements are not quite as lengthy as ours.
You answer my question.
Any other questions at this point? All right, we got a lot of work to do in a short period of time, Joe, and thanks for helping lead us through it.
Sure.
With that, Mr. City Attorney, if you'll just make sure that that's on the agenda for the next council meeting. Let's go to unfinished business.
Mayor, may I ask one question? What
Sure.
would be the closing date to have legislation filed for?
I don't know. The ordinances on the book say it's the Tuesday before the next council meeting.
So I guess that means Tuesday,
Same
same time.
Yeah,
Have it to you by Friday of this
Yeah.
week if there's anything. Okay. Not that I have anything, but I just want to make sure if anybody else does.
Yeah, same filing deadline as usual, this coming Tuesday.
Yes.
Okay? RO 5150, please call it unfinished business.
This is a resolution accepting the low bid of signs for a sign at the North Shore Maritime Center in the city of North Little Rock.
I think you have an amendment.
We do that changes the dollar amount because of the sign size change.
Right. And
You
it's
want me
my
to read it,
understanding. Excuse me?
You want me to read the amendment?
Please.
Okay, the suggested amendment creates a third whereas clause that says, whereas the size of the sign has been reduced, and First Signs had submitted its revised bid in the amount of $25,943 plus tax. See sign price revision specs and drawings attached here to as Exhibit B. There is a new Exhibit B, and then in Section 1, $29,645 is stricken, and inserted is $25,943 plus tax. And in
Excuse me, let me interrupt, Mr. Rhodes. Make sure Mr. Gertz doesn't leave in case we got any questions on this next item. Oh, I'm sorry. Right behind Miss Maddie's head. I'm sorry, Mr. Gertz.
And in section 2, 29,645 is stricken and 25,943 is inserted. And I got original here for the city clerk.
Move to amend.
Is there a second?
Second.
On the motion to amend?
On the motion, Gibson.
Yes.
Bryant.
Yes.
Robinson. Yes. Thomas.
Yes.
Barron.
Yes.
Parker.
Yes.
Height.
Yes.
And Richards.
Yes, move for adoption as amended.
Second.
On the motion?
Gibson.
Yes.
Bryant.
Yes.
Robinson. Yes. Thomas.
Yes.
Barron.
Yes.
Parker.
Yes.
Height.
Yes.
And Richards.
Yes.
How much reduction we do there? How much?
About 4,000.
No, I mean on the size.
Oh, I don't know. Whatever it is, we're legal.
The size is reduced.
Yeah.
Have to go to the very.
I knew that, but.
Alderman Witcher?
Substantially.
Flagpole stay the same.
Okay. Next item,
05160, Barry Hayes.
please call it.
A resolution authorizing the mayor and the city clerk to enter into a power supply agreement with William Renewable Energy LLC.
Can I get a motion for adoption?
I make the motion. Second.
This is the contract essentially was Waste Management. What our cost read is that we'll pay this year until we enter the new contract. Listen to me, Joe, if I make a mistake. And that once we enter into a new contract, then our rate will be whatever our new rate will be, less 5%. So that we are very. There's no way we can lose on this contract. The waste management, folks do have the opportunity under federal law to require us to take what we call avoided cost, which I think all of us feel will be, significantly in excess of what this negotiated rate is. Mr. Gertz, if you want to come to the microphone, if there's any questions, we feel like this is a good deal for the city and citizens of our community. What percentage of our overall power needs do you think this will provide? Remind me. Less than 5%.
Oh, it's very low, 3 to 4%.
3 to 4%.
The units themselves will produce on the order of 4.2 or 4.3 megawatts. So
And we have the lines in place now.
we do not. That is our cost contribution to the project is to build a transmission line from the Two Pines landfill to our McCain substation. The cost of that we're estimating at between $200,000 and $260,000. If you look at it, this proposal was originally put to the council, and in the original proposal, we were also going to pay for the construction, but we were going to provide a prepayment to Waste Management of $4.8 million. And then over the course of the generation of the project, we would be paid back. But, there were issues that were raised by bond counsel related to that prepayment, so we had to go back and renegotiate a deal with Waste Management. There's two aspects to this. One, we want to save a little bit of money, and the other is we want to be good stewards of the environment, rather than them just burn this in the atmosphere, and we can take it and utilize it to generate electricity. So the short of the financials are we had spent about $230,000. We'll have that money back in 3 years, and then at that point we're making money to the tune of about $100,000 every year. Net present value over the course of the contract to us is on the order of $500,000 to $600,000.
Alderman Witcher.
Okay, how long is the proposed transmission link? Approximately
4 miles.
4 miles. Across private property?
Yes. We are paralleling the Entergy transmission line that goes from Jacksonville South into the McCain station. So there's already a right-of-way, and you don't have a right-of-way there, you have easements. And so we're negotiating to get on those easements. Now, our alternative to that, if we run into a problem there, is to jump out to 167, and to go down the highway right away and get us into McCain. But that is not the preferred route, because all the issues we have to deal with.
Okay. What about protection?
14.8 breaker in the station, so there'll be protective relay at the generator that'll essentially protect their transformer.
Okay, so we're not going to have to buy any additional relays or switches?
For us, if we do, it will be minimal. I mean, what do we have to protect, Alderman? All we have is our line. I mean, and our line's protected by the breaker. The real equipment is their generator and their transformer. So, you know, it's really incumbent upon them.
Well, wouldn't we have an obligation with surges and to protect their equipment in the line?
Well, their protective relay should take it out and out of it.
Okay, all right. So they're installing the relay then.
That's right.
So they'll be doing the synchronization?
That's right. They will synchronize to us.
Okay. And who will be the controller for the line? Who will have operational control?
We will. We will own the line right up to the disconnect at the high side of the transformer. We're going to meter at our substation to minimize our RTU costs, telecommunications costs, and also to minimize the losses that would be applied to us. So essentially, we're taking it at zero losses.
Okay. All right. Joe, I'm sorry I didn't call you and ask you all these questions before. Okay, are you planning on building the transmission line with your crews, or are you going to contract it?
We're going to contract it.
Single pole, Delta configuration?
I don't know that the actual configuration has been decided at this point. Now, we have done checks on, Transtech is helping us with this project. Transtech, you're probably familiar with Mike Hughes. Maybe, perhaps not. They're a consulting firm out of Clarksville. They're helping with this project. We use them quite frequently, and pretty much a turnkey sort of job.
Okay. I would suggest to you that your transmission cost is probably going to be 4 miles, going to be closer to probably $3 million than
$3 million?
Yeah, than 300,000. I'm just taking a wild guess, Joe. Okay.
How about we talk about that?
Okay.
That's not what I'm getting from the engineers.
Obviously we're doing this predicated on the general cost that you're sharing with us in terms of what the transmission line would cost. And what was that in the neighborhood? 160?
200 to 260,000.
2 to 250. Joe, you and Alderman Witcher help us get comfortable with this, because I can always veto, this legislation if for some reason we're way off on that, because that would obviously change in some extremely significant degree the return that we felt we would get if it was $2 to $3 million. Would it not?
Mayor, I don't think there's, and no disrespect, Alderman, but I don't think there's any way we're going to approach $3 million.
Okay.
I'm fairly comfortable with the number that we've been supplied so far.
It's costing us $1.2 million a mile to build a 150. Well, of course, it's a 13.8. Okay.
We're talking 336 conductors, one pole, maybe a cross arm type configuration,
Okay.
or a pure pole mounted.
Well, I'm going to ask, Mr. Gertz to, get real comfortable on that and let me know by Friday, if there's any change in that, because we sure don't want to go down a road and find out that we're 10% of what we thought the cost would be.
Mayor, just remind you, we're authorizing you to sign it, we're not directing you to sign it.
I understand that. All right. On the motion.
On the motion, Gibson.
Yes.
Bryant.
Yes.
Robinson. Yes. Thomas.
Yes.
Barron.
Yes.
Parker.
Yes.
Pike.
Yes.
And Witcher.
Yes.
All right, don't get that to me to sign, Joe, until you get real comfortable on that transmission.
Mayor, let me ask you. All right, so basically we're talking about, you call it transmission, you're talking about heavy distribution.
It's a 336 distribution.
336.
That's correct.
Okay.
All right, just, I'd love to hear from you, Joe, before we sign this. Next item, I don't believe we have any ordinances. Let's go to new business.
New business, R05-166, Mayor Hayes.
Please call it.
A resolution amending resolution number 6855.
Let me ask the council move for adoption, and I'll explain it.
So moved.
Moved and seconded. What this is, you all recall several council meetings ago, we authorized the expenditure of I don't have it flipped, but $360,000 to join with Little Rock and the other cities in the county to be able to come up with $1 million to offer the county, provided that they were able to keep open 960 beds or more. In negotiations with the county, because in large measure the configuration of the jail, it became obvious that was a difficult, if not impractical, request. There's one pod that remains that's of the existing regional jail that can house 80 inmates, and in order to keep the misdemeanor work release center open, the judge indicated that would be somewhere in the $2.5 to $3 million range. So, that $2.5 to $3 million would be needed, according to the judge, if we had one misdemeanor or if we had 250 misdemeanors. So, it became obvious that, that we would not be able to, he would not be able to, and he indicated that he wouldn't, be able to reach the 960 bed level. So what, the cities and the judge came up with in terms of recommending to our respective governing bodies is that we would retain the same amount of funds that were allocated from the cities, which would be $1 million, and that the judge would come up with $150,000, and I think that's already been authorized by the quorum court, if not close to, and that we would use the $810,000, $15,000, $20,000 to keep open that one pod, which is 80 beds, which in essence would allow us to keep the same number of beds that have always been available under the 1,100 bed scenario for felons, and what we would be losing is the 250 misdemeanor beds. So with the $1 million, we would have somewhere in the neighborhood of $350,000, $400,000 in additional money that would not need to be utilized in the operation of the 880 beds, or the additional 80 over the 800 that's currently set aside, and that $350,000 to $400,000 could be used in a way to try to house as many misdemeanors as are possible. We are working with other cities in the county, in addition to the county judge, to find out what's the most practical way to use those funds, if they are available, to try to house as many misdemeanors as is possible with that $350,000 to $400,000. So what this legislation does is essentially remove the restriction that was on the previous legislation. It doesn't change any dollar amounts, and just allows us to utilize those funds generally in the way that I've described. If there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. If not, would you please call the roll?
Gibson.
Yes.
Bryant.
Yes.
Robinson. Yes. Thomas.
Yes.
Berry.
Yes.
Parker.
Yes.
Height.
Yes.
And Witcher.
Yes.
R05-167, Alderman Gibson.
Call it, please.
A resolution appropriating $25,000 from the general fund for the Code Enforcement Department's debris removal program.
Move for adoption. I'll explain if anybody needs me to.
Second. Have the floor, Alderman.
This is our, better known as a dumpster program, where people tear down their own property, and it's been a very successful program.
On the motion.
Gibson.
Yes.
Bryant.
Yes.
Robinson. Yes. Thomas.
Yes.
Berry.
Yes.
Parker.
Yes.
Height.
Yes.
And Witcher.
Yes.
0595, Mayor Hayes.
Please call it.
This is the ordinance amending budget ordinance number 7685, first reading.
Let's go ahead and we need to
Suspend
act
rules,
on
place
that.
on second reading.
Motion made and seconded to suspend the rules on the motion.
Gibson.
Yes.
Bryant.
Yes.
Robinson.
Yes.
Thomas.
Yes.
Barry.
Yes.
Parker.
Yes.
Height.
Yes.
And Witcher.
Yes.
This is
Suspend the
a,
rules, please.
Well, let's read it.
this is an ordinance amending budget ordinance number 7685, second reading.
All right.
Move to suspend the rules, place it on third reading.
Is there a second
Second.
on the motion?
Gibson.
Yes.
Bryant.
Yes.
Robinson.
Yes.
Thomas.
Yes.
Barry.
Yes.
Parker.
Yes.
Height.
Yes.
And Witcher.
Yes.
This is an ordinance amending budget ordinance number 7685, third and final reading.
Before we call it for a vote, Mr. Sisson, you want to come up in case there are any questions? This is what we normally do at the latter part, if not the end of every year. And you want to make a comment or two and see if there are any questions?
Yes, sir. In the general fund, let me run a couple of them that had some large increase. The fire department, about 3/4 of that was overtime. The fire department sent some firemen, I believe Katrina will be reimbursed for most of that after the first year. And the other is some overtime they spent. The other large one is adding to the sanitation department. Our landfill has we've had a small price rate increase, but we've carried a lot of trash out there. I don't have any particular reason. Either we cut him too short this when we did the original budget, but we just going to have some more on that one. I think that's basically it. The Parks Department is not asking any additional money. They're just shifting some funds around. And the other major increase is the Street Department. We probably cut them short a little bit too. We did away with cut down the street program, and we didn't add much street material, so we need to add some more street material in this year's budget. So most of those, this is something we do every year, and it's just things we've gone over and we adjust the revenues.
Any questions?
Do we have the money to pay for it?
Yes, sir. We wouldn't have spent.
No, we're going to be bouncing. Let's go ahead and get a motion to adopt on third and final.
So moved.
Is there a second? On the motion to adopt on third and final, Mr. Marshall?
Gibson.
Yes.
Bryant.
Yes.
Robinson.
Yes.
Thomas.
Yes.
Barry.
Yes.
Parker.
Yes.
Height.
Yes.
And Witcher.
Yes.
On the emergency, Gibson.
Yes.
Bryant.
Yes.
Robinson.
Yes.
Thomas.
Yes.
Barry.
Yes.
Parker.
Yes.
Height.
Yes.
And Witcher.
Yes.
00597, Mayor Hayes.
Please call it.
This is an ordinance authorizing the issuance of short-term financing obligations under Amendment Number 78 to the Arkansas Constitution for the
Acquisition.
construction and installation of real and tangible personal property, and prescribing other matters pertaining thereto. First reading.
Move to suspend the rules and place it on second reading.
Second.
On the motion?
Gibson.
Yes.
Bryant.
Yes.
Robinson.
Yes.
Thomas.
Yes.
Barry.
Yes.
Parker.
Yes.
Height.
Yes.
And Witcher.
Yes.
This is an ordinance authorizing the issuance of short-term financing obligations under Amendment Number 78 to the Arkansas Constitution for the acquisition, construction, and installation of real and tangible personal property. Second reading.
Got an amendment?
We got an amendment?
Yes.
Okay, let's go ahead and read it then, and then we'll do the amendment. Or did you just read it?
Just read it.
Okay, so why don't we go ahead and take it third and final, then do the amendment. Is there a motion to suspend the rules? So moved.
Second.
On the motion, suspend the rules, Ms. Marshall?
Gibson.
Yes.
Bryant.
Yes.
Robinson.
Yes.
Thomas.
Yes.
Barry.
Yes.
Parker.
Yes.
Height.
Yes.
And Witcher.
Yes.
Go ahead and read it.
This is an ordinance authorizing the issuance of short-term financing obligations under Amendment Number 78 to the Arkansas Constitution for the acquisition, construction, and installation of real and tangible personal property. Third and final reading.
All right, we've got an amendment.
Yes, I've distributed copies of the amendment. The suggested amendment is to add a new Section 4, renumber each of the following sections in sequential order. And the new Section 4 would say the note may be secured by the imposition of a foreclosable mortgage lien upon the projects in whole or in part. That gives us the option to secure this note by a mortgage.
Ms. Marshall, do you need this? Move for the amendment.
Motion made, she has the amendment. Motion made, is there a second?
Second.
On the motion to amend?
On the motion to amend, Gibson.
Yes.
Bryant.
Yes.
Robinson.
Yes.
Thomas.
Yes.
Barry.
Yes.
Parker.
Yes.
Height.
Yes.
And Witcher.
Yes.
And before I ask for a motion to adopt as amended, let me just make sure that those out in the audience as well as home know what this is authorizing the city the opportunity to borrow up to $12 million to cover, we'll say, deficiencies in the monthly sales tax payments that we'll be receiving. We all know that, particularly Mr. Sisson and I know, we'll receive our first check, although the tax began October the 1st. We'll receive our October month payment the last week of this month. And we'll receive payments for 23 months thereafter for a total of 24. The ballpark opens, will open the 1st of April, so, there's no question that there'll be money owed before money's received, because, the last payment we won't receive for, roughly 8 months, 8, maybe 9 months after the ballpark opens. So, in addition to added costs that will be submitted both for the senior center and for the ballpark prior to the final payments being received. So, this simply is authorizing us to, on a short-term basis, that we would very much anticipate that all of this borrowing would be paid off within 8-9 months of the opening of the ballpark, when we receive our last check, which would be November of 07. With that, do I have a motion to adopt as amended?
So moved.
Is there a second? On the motion?
Gibson.
Yes.
Bryant.
Yes.
Robinson.
Yes.
Thomas.
Yes.
Barry.
Yes.
Parker.
Yes.
Height.
Yes.
And Witcher.
Yes.
On the emergency, Gibson.
Yes.
Bryant.
Yes.
Robinson.
Yes.
Thomas.
Yes.
Barry.
Yes.
Parker.
Yes.
Height.
Yes.
And Witcher.
Yes.
00598, Mayor Hayes.
Let me see if I can do that. Mr. Voyles, these are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pocket annexations. We need to call a public hearing on each of these, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
And until that public hearing is called and we open that for any comments, we do not have the ability to act on these.
That's correct. State law requires a public hearing and 15 days notice. We've sent that out. And at your direction, we made that for the first council in January.
First council meeting in January. That's because of a notice requirement has to be a certain amount in prior to the certain amount of time has to